So Keith, yeah. Uh, I mean, you read the article from Inklink, so you kind of get an idea of like the past and how RecoverYdia came about.
Yep.
What's really, I think, unique about our partnership and what we're doing is that it's all grassroots. And we made the decision that we were gonna build this thing, and we were gonna keep going with it, no matter what took place. And I think, the pandemic happening, and then, the social justice movements that the country's
Right.
seeing, and election season, all of these things just kind of crept in and became, additional noise,
Positives.
for people. Yeah, right. It's like we've really, attention is the most valuable thing out there, right?
Right.
Getting people's attention. Absolutely. And, we understand that as well. And, we believe really, really strongly that the message that we're trying to send, a very innocuous, a very simple message, that meaningful human connection is important for us to be able to meet the basic psychological needs of individuals. We're trying to help break down the stigma of mental health and substance use disorder, to try to reduce the number of deaths of despair that are happening. And in doing so, we're trying to spread a message that we need to reach out and connect with each other. We need to find a way to set aside maybe some differences that we have, and open our hearts, be a little more compassionate for other human beings, and get out of here and get out of here and have more of this. And this is a challenging time for that, because here we are talking over a computer screen, and here we are in a very isolating time, where people were already living in the loneliest time period that we have ever experienced in, really, from history, in terms of when we were tracking these types of things.
And
We're,
statistics
we're
show
reading
that 20,
research. Yeah, we're reading research where members of the Gen Z
this is the
population,
loneliest generation.
Yep.
it's the loneliest generation. 40% of them can't even count on a best friend.
Yeah.
Right. So if you think about primitive tribal culture, intact primitive tribal culture,
Mhm.
so I caveat that with intact, they take care of each other through the entire life cycle. They don't suffer from addiction. They don't suffer from depression. Right. So as society marches forward, we find that, people have more and more reason to be isolated and separated from one another. And in doing so, we cut off a vital need, that need to be valued, that need to have a place in the world, that need to have a purpose, that need to have some kind of place in the future that they can see, that we can see. And as a result, we see the second leading cause of death for young people in New Hampshire is suicide.
Yeah.
We see that we're in the middle of an opioid epidemic, and it's reached the Caucasian population after years of struggling in the inner city. And so we are in a desperate time across the board. And so our message is simple. It is let's meet the needs by informing people that when you relax and hang out with people you trust, you find yourself operating from your limbic system. You're producing enough serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin to promote a sense of well-being. And that happens very naturally. And it's the way it's supposed to be. It's the way that we lived together for tens of thousands of years prior to modern civilization.
That's awesome. I think he's given you a
Tour of the
preview
studio.
here. Yeah, this is the studio where we're going to be doing the event from.
Yeah. Well, that's
So
cool stuff. Yeah. So it's
yeah, that
wonderful
is
background. Let me ask, since it was 6 sites coming down to one and it's virtual, what do you think is the biggest risk to what you're trying to accomplish through this event?
well, that's a good question. I think that when we think about, human connection and the purpose of people coming together to grieve collectively, and grieve for those that we lost, there's power to people coming together and congregating in person for a live event. And we thought long and hard about that. We even for a while we had put together a drive-in. We were gonna attempt to do a drive-in style.
Mhm.
So outside of this facility that we're in now is an enormous parking lot where we could fit about 100 cars. And so we played with the idea of bringing 100 cars in, setting up a stage out front, so that we could at least have some semblance of togetherness, people really coming together. And when you move into a virtual world, it's not that people can't come together, because you can. There are ways, it's the commenting on the live stream. You could have friends that are friends with one another on a FaceTime or a vigil, hanging out with each other, doing like a watch party. You've seen these on Facebook and whatnot. They do a watch party where you can watch something with other people. So there are those tools and resources, but trying to reach the amount of people that we hope to be able to reach, and really have it be a healing event. I think that it remains to be seen. I don't know too many people that have tried to do a vigil / remembrance virtually on a live stream. I mean, I haven't seen one yet. So, we could be forging a new path forward here,
Right.
and I think we want to try to really, I think again, we're optimists too. And I think about the potential here now to be able to reach a national audience, to be able to reach a much wider audience. And, because it's not just New Hampshire that's suffering from disconnection and loneliness and isolation and deaths of despair and substance use and mental health issues. I mean, these issues are pervasive all throughout this country, and beyond our country. So, we have a professional production that's being done. You saw the studio that it's being done in. And, to be able to produce something that looks really, really good, that's going to go out and be broadcast to the world. And then beyond that, we'll have a finished piece of media that we can take cuts from. Some of the people speaking have really, really powerful stories and messages. And we can produce media from that all year long, and we can continue to propagate the message. But having this go out, right now we're really trying to get the word out to as many people as possible, so that people will share the live stream. So that the hope is that we can get this to go viral. For good reasons. There's really, no self-promotion here. There's a brand, 10,000 Candles, but the brand is primarily
A message set.
Right.
determined to just get the message. Yeah,
It's a message set.
You have marketing background.
Yeah.
You know that messaging is how people retain things. Keep it simple.
Right.
Keep it simple.
Right. And so, the call to action is for people to understand that it's okay to work through the shame and the grief. Deaths of despair are something that a lot of families and a lot of people are living through. And, to come together and grieve and separate the people, the individuals from their afflictions, and remember what is to be venerated about them and understood about them and be loved about them, brings us, we've got to go through the grieving process if we're going to get well. And for specifically for parents who've lost their children to overdose, it's an extremely difficult thing.
Yeah. And
so for the moms who are interviewing for this and speaking at this event, the message they have, comes to the ears of other women and moms who are suffering and struggling, and it really, really supports them and nurtures them and touches them in a place that they've long forgotten, and perhaps even start some healing, some grieving and some healing. For instance, Anne-Marie Zanfagna, she's the artist that's behind Angels of Addictions. She's done over 300 portraits of children whose parents have sent photographs to her so that she could render them into portraits. And we're displaying their portraits. They all have a unique, they're all unique in color, in the grade of their detail, but they are all very similar. You can tell that it's a Xanthagna when you look at it. She's got a brand about it. And her story is that she lost her daughter Rachel in 2012 to a heroin overdose, which was the first line in Rachel's obituary, which is very uncommon in this day and age.
Right.
So she definitely wanted to share her grief because she knew there was other people who were grieving. And so they have been sending her photographs of their children for years now. And she's been painting them, and she's up to 300. So while she speaks, we'll be screening videos that basically transition through all of the images, all of her portraits. And then, oh, there you go. That's great.
Nice.
So when you look at that, you start to put a face on the enormity of the problem. 185 people overdosing in America a day. There are 22 veterans a day committing suicide. So we have a veteran who's coming to speak, a veteran who's got actually removed from the armed forces for attempting to take their own life, you know, and how they've suffered with mental illness and how they've struggled and how they work. They're somebody who gives you an action plan and tools to never follow through on the ideas that are in your head. You know, so that's really a public service for him to come and be grouped into this message set. You know, you don't have to worry about asking people if they're thinking of harming themselves, because you're not putting the idea in their head. They've already had it. You know what I mean? So there's stigma around that as well.
Well, that's it. It's taboo to talk about, which is why so much of that has gone undiscussed, and it crosses every socioeconomic level.
Yeah, like addiction. Because as a society, we're less and less good at meeting those basic psychological needs, enabling people to feel like they're valued, that they belong to something, and that there's a place for them in the future. And this is not rocket surgery. This is pretty straightforward stuff, but it's not. You drive down any street, you look through any print media, you get on any website. These are not messages people are getting. You have to look for these, and you have to immerse yourself. And most people have to actually live through having been thrown a curveball in order to really get it. While the rest of these people who are struggling and suffering don't understand why. They haven't really connected why they're struggling and suffering. And when they don't feel good, what do? They isolate further. They medicate with booze and drugs. They go on a gambling binge. They binge watch, you know, countless hours of Netflix. They video game until, you know, they have carpal tunnel. I mean, it goes on and on. If they do not connect to other human beings, which promote a sense of well-being, they'll connect to something else, which doesn't necessarily promote a sense of well-being. It just covers up the pain.
Yeah, very true. And we are a social creature, whether people want to admit to it or not. We need others. And we are, whether we're tribal or simply social. That
right.
Isolation is, and you're right, because all of the things that you do when depression or upsetness hits, you close down, which is the exact opposite of what you need.
Exactly. I mean, you know, it's a hard task for some people to make themselves engage. And we're here to tell you that, you know what, on the other side of that, there's a promise. And there's a gift, and that is a brain function that produces serotonin and dopamine and oxytocin, and gives you a sense. And that's what's happening at a chemical level. What's happening at your human level is that you're starting to gain a sense that you belong to something, to somebody, and that you're together through this. And no matter what happens, you can hold on. You can hold on to somebody else who's been through it, who's willing to put out their hand and say, "Hey, I get it. I'm with you. I see you, I'm with you, I am you." And once we see that commonality, we can get through pretty much anything.
No, I agree. And that reaching out as your hand, as you say, it predicates that there's some degree of trust for you. So that's the keys in establishing how you grow and how you will, as you know, the need is universal. So how does this go viral? It becomes one trust, something the internet's capable of doing. if you look to the good side of it.
Mm.
It's true. We've set up peer support groups on our website, on RecoverYdia.com, and literally hundreds of people a day come through these meetings at 6:30, noon, 7 p.m. They're predicated upon a 12-step recovery program, but all in all the same. It's the same methodology. It's people who rely on each other to share their experience, strength, and hope, to bring themselves out of a state of insanity and bring them back into the fold, where they have a purpose in life, a common purpose, and a place to go when they're not feeling well. It's like when you're into substance use or substance misuse, you're actually treating the malady, and the malady is isolation, separateness, And so substance use treats as that. The problem with substance use is that it's temporary. It won't last. It gets you sick, gets you in trouble. It can blow up your whole life. Whereas if you treat your malady with human connection, moving in the right direction, which is, what people do when they nurture and care and love on each other, you start to find out that you're living a better life than you could have ever imagined. And that's been my experience, and that's been the experience of those who join these meetings every day.
Describe RecoverYdia to me, because I understand it as recovery in media.
Yeah. So like Matt says this really well too, so I'll let him riff on this. But basically, we've interviewed people who have been blown up in terrorist attacks, who have been kicked out of the workplace because of the color of their skin, who have been first responders to a terrorist attack, who have been veterans who came back with a galloping case of PTS and had to recover through beekeeping. Of course, substance use disorder, alcoholism. There's a myriad of people who've had their limbs hacked or knocked off in accidents. There's a myriad of curveballs being thrown at people in life, and they have to recover from it. And their stories of hope and resilience give strength to others. And I'm sorry, I'm not even steal your thunder. You go ahead,
the nail on the head. But yeah, I think just to kind of riff on that a little further, you think about the word recovery, and depending on the context that you hear it in, it conjures up a different image, right? If I just had, triple bypass surgery, I'm going to be in recovery for a while, right? If I had a serious problem with alcohol, I was alcoholic, and I decided to go into 30-day rehab, and then I came out and I went into sober living, and now I'm living a life that's substance use and substance free. I'm in recovery. If I attempted to take my own life and then was battling depression, and now I am joining regular support groups, and I'm helping other people who may be struggling with suicidal ideation, I am a person in recovery from mental health and suicide attempt. So the word recovery has different meanings in different contexts, but really I think the underlying thing when you think about recovery is that I was in this place, and this was a dark, bad place, whatever it may be. Maybe, I was unhealthy. Maybe I was struggling with a disability that I was having a real hard time coping with, an injury, a mental health issue, whatever it may be. But I was in this dark place, and somewhere I eventually hit the bottom, whatever that bottom was. And then there was a turnaround, and something happened, and some turnaround took place, and I started to go heading on a path to wellness. And then once I reached that place, to maintain that wellness, I am in some way giving back to others. I'm helping other people. Otherwise, I may very well fall back into that dark place again from whence I came. And that story is almost universal for anybody who goes through any type of struggle, and comes out the other side a better, stronger, more resilient person. and we capture that resiliency. We capture that story. We want to know how you turned your tragedy into triumph, how you turned your mess into your message, and what you are doing now to help other people so that your story has power. It has the power to heal others. And that's oftentimes what we find, is that people's story has an immense healing power. And our goal is to capture that story, whatever it may be, so long as you meet that criteria. You know, you had this issue, you went to that place where the only place for you at that point was up, or death, or the other way. You decided to go the other way. You went towards the light, and now you're paying it forward. And we've caught some doozies. I mean, we got some incredible stories that just like, you feel things inside of you that it's like, it's almost inexplicable.
You look at the term, and I'm going to get spiritual here without getting theological. You look at the term hallowed, and its etymology goes back to whole and healed. The term healed and the term whole and hallowed have their origins in the same place, which is, it means unified, together, back together again, whole again. So when people have some kind of malady or illness, they're separated. They're separated from what they need to feel like they're complete and whole again. And Matt was using terms like healed, and he was talking about the transformation of somebody who's coming from darkness into light. And that light is represented, and if you think about it, represented in a word, hallowed and whole and healed. We start to think about what is the spirituality of recovery, and it has to be like, we are no longer separated, which, we are now part of instead of being apart from. And when you think about that, it gets back into the message set of RecoverYdia and 10,000 Candles, right? So it's, I often equate spirituality as a very human thing. And this is the humanity of spirituality. Use words and messaging to enable people to recognize and come into a conscience of how their collaboration and movement together is going to restore them from a hopeless state.
It is about healing, and it's a very powerful statement. And there's another side to that, because that's the active world of people healing themselves, or with community and support and trusted people helping heal. But I also think to the Hawaiian comment of, we talk story. And it is through stories that you today call it go viral, but through talking stories, sharing stories, is how we communicate the message. And the meaning facts are not as memorable. So it's a very powerful tool. And when I heard RecoverYdia, it seemed to me to be a really, really powerful way to go about helping others in this and using these tools. And we're coming up to the end of the time, so I want to thank you for spending time with me and doing this, and really appreciate what you guys have done.
Absolutely. If you have any follow-up questions, Keith, please email them over. Happy to answer. And we appreciate you taking the time to meet with us and hear the story and share the message.
Thank you.
Thank you for helping us share our story of our message set. We appreciate it very much.
Good.